welcome to a very special episode of the Hollywood Critics Association Moon Knight After Show. We are on to episode 5, and we all had to wait many weeks for this episode. For me, worth it, totally worth it, worth waking up early, worth diving into it, worth having my heart broken this early in the morning. But before we dive into this episode, we're going to let you all know where to find us. I'm Tessa Smith. You guys can find me everywhere at Mama's Geeky, mamasgeeky.com, Mama's Geeky on all social media, here on YouTube. And Michael, why don't you let everyone know where they can find you?
Hi, so I'm Michael Lee, right here. Yeah, see, there we go. I'm
Yeah.
Michael Lee. I got it. It's too early to lift the whole arm up, but yeah, I'm Michael Lee, and you can find me, my writing at That's It LA, Nerd the Nerds of Color, We Live Entertainment, and on all socials at I am Michael J. Lee, like right there. So
look at you, you got it twice in a row. That's awesome. Yeah. Andrea, why don't you let everyone know where they can find you?
Hi, I'm Andrea. You can find me on socials, specifically Twitter at _A_Towers, which is this way. I'm going to pretend I'm smart enough at 9 a.m. And also writing at Entertainment Weekly.
All right. And Josie, how about you?
You can find me at the Josie Marie on Twitter and Letterboxd if people are still using Twitter.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
All right, guys, are you ready to dive into it? Listen, this episode, like I said, we all had to wait. I think it ended up being it was 5 or 6 weeks that we had. I think it was 6 weeks we had to wait. It's a long time. It's a very, very long time to sit with that ending, that cliffhanger of an ending. But holy cow, like, let's just get our overall thoughts. For me, this was well worth the wait. I thought this episode was dark, emotional, complex. Not at all what I was expecting, I don't think. But I was here for it. Michael, how did you feel about this week's episode?
As far as penultimate episodes go, this is probably one of my favorites, as we finally get to see a story that has not been, I guess, explored or mined as much as the previous episodes have been. So yeah, I really like this episode from a character development aspect.
Yeah, we got to see a whole lot of Mark and Steven actually finally having the conversation they really needed to have. Andrea, what did you think about this episode?
It was basically everything I love about Marvel and Disney Plus show in like 50 minutes. Like it was funny, it was emotional, it was heartbreaking. It gave us a bunch of like lore drop, and it introduced new mysteries, and I loved it. It was well worth waking up early in the morning to watch it. Even if it left me both confused and emotionally
heartbroken,
distraught,
depressed. Yeah, that's what Marvel likes to do to us.
Exactly. Yeah, look, 3 years ago I was emotionally distraught on a movie theater floor, so might as well just do it again.
Right, exactly. This time in the comfort of our own home. So, Josie, how did you feel?
Yeah, I set an alarm for 7 a.m. to watch this episode so we could do the live show, and my body just decided to wake me up at 5 because I guess it knew. It knew. But this is the first time I felt so strongly about an episode since WandaVision. So that makes me very happy because that's my favorite Marvel TV show so far. The only unsettling feeling I guess I have in me is that I like the episode, but now I'm like, how are we going to solve everything by the next one? Are we going to solve anything? Because some people are saying that they could do a season 2. Some are saying it's a limited series. My mind is just like, what's going on? Because so much happened in this episode, but also, what?
I know. Well, because like with Loki, we got a season 2, and this one, I think they said limited series at one point, but I feel like they said that about Loki also, and then we're like, more. Yeah, and then they changed their mind. So I'm not sure, and that's the thing is, are they going to stick the landing, right? Are they going to be able to pull it off? I don't know. We can talk about that at the end of the show, but right now, let's just talk about how it starts off immediately where it ended. Screaming at this giant hippo, what's going on? But then it flashes right to him back with Harrow. And that's kind of a thing the whole episode is this going back and forth. And you're still like, wait, what's real and what isn't? It's true Marvel fashion. They drive you crazy the whole time. But I love how they did that this episode. And that's how they kind of tackled the two of them really having this conversation. They've got Harrow telling them they have to do it. They've got Taweret telling them they have to do it. And it's just like they're being forced to finally talk to each other. Michael, how did you feel when it immediately jump back into Mark's sitting in the room with Harrow, and he's like having a conversation with him.
I really like the whole idea of they're playing with this whole unreliable narrator, but now they're evolving that into an unreliable setting, because we don't know if it's the insane asylum or if it's the afterlife or not the afterlife. It's like a different kind of afterlife, I guess, or what, a branch off a different afterlife. But it's just it becomes confusing in a way that's, you just accept it. It's like, oh my gosh, I don't get it. I shouldn't like it, but I do like it now, sort of thing. So it's a fun way to see how they can play with your mind, sort of thing. And we've always talked about how it's a psychological thriller. Well, this is really playing into that. So yeah, I really liked how they did that with this episode.
Yeah, this episode was, I think, full psychological thriller, where you're just like, where the audience doesn't even know what exactly is going on. Andrea, how did you feel about the aspect of the switching back and forth?
Yeah, I mean, I finished the episode and I still don't know what's going on. I'll admit that. Like, I'm going back and forth. I was so confused. I'm like, are they, because you still don't get answers. You still really, I mean, they tell them, she tells them they're in the afterlife and all that, but you flash back enough with, like, every scene is so convincing, the way they shoot it and the way they film it, that you don't really know what's true. And obviously, Oscar Isaac is so convincing in everything that he does, and in every scene he does, that you're just constantly sitting there like, is this real? Is this not real? I guess we'll figure it out by the end of the series. But I do love that they really dug into using, like Michael said, using that unreliable narrator and transferring that to like an unreliable setting, because it really it's a really cool way to kind of dive into this character. And I mean, what we've seen so far, it's hard to be like, this is one part of him and this is the other part of him, and and this is a nice way to really kind of explain that in a way that, I mean, we'll get more into it, but like when you really get into the backstory, it's an easy way to make it kind of make sense.
Yeah, it's just, I feel like they raised the bar every episode of this entire series, but this was like a way bigger jump than they have from episode to episode before. Josie, how did you feel about this?
It definitely brought onto me that kind of anxiety that usually comes with a psychological thriller watching, because some moments I was like, what's going on? Are they okay? So I think they did that job well. It definitely did feel unreliable, but at the same time, I like that at least now we have a little bit of stability, like knowing, yes, they are in the duat. And also, just when you were talking about like the afterlife, I geeked out when Taweret was talking about like, oh, this is just one. Like, there's also the ancestral plane. It's so lovely.
It's like
I was like,
branch.
Black Panther.
Yeah, I know. I
love that connection.
Yeah.
I love that connection, and I love that they're also like just putting that out there for everyone who's watching, and everyone's different cultures and beliefs and religions. That just like, this is one. There's a whole bunch. I'm like, man, yeah, like, way to go, Marvel. Like, good for you.
I thought that was great.
Yeah, Marvel's always so good about that stuff. But one of the things I thought was the craziest, and I put it in the notes because I had to talk about it, is just when Mark is like talking about like, I'm going to open this door and it's going to be people playing bingo and blah, blah, blah. And it's like they walk outside and they're literally like, oh no, we are on our way to the field of reeds. Like, this is insane. I thought that moment was so well shot and so well done, Michael. They just added a whole new layer. What was your thoughts when you opened the door and it's like, oh no, he's not still in the psych ward. Now he's out in this crazy thing on a boat.
Oh, so yeah. Before I talk about that, I just want to hint at a little bit when they were talking to Taweret. They had this little crazy shot in the corner where the two marks were there, and I think that was a little bit before or maybe after, but yeah, the two marks were there, and I thought that was a really clever way to bring in how to trick you to thinking there are actually two Oscar Isaacs, which would be great in real life if there were two Oscar Isaacs. But yeah, going to the opening scene, I thought that was a really fun way to see, like we said about afterlives and different religions aspect. It just opened the world of Marvel and how they embrace all, or how they're starting to at least embrace all the religions and all different sets of beliefs, and establish rules and understand that each of those religions have different, kind of ways of thinking or philosophies and such. So yeah, I thought that was a great way to open that aspect of that world.
Yeah, I know, I agree. And it was like, can we talk about how gorgeous it is too? Like they're really like, I feel like they had a great budget. They have really all throughout the series, but when you just that scene where you see out there, I was like, man, this is beautiful. And then they're like, whoa, we're on a boat. This is crazy. Andrea, how did you feel when he opened the door? Were you expecting to see people playing bingo, or were you expecting to see what you
I mean,
saw?
in my mind, I guess I was, but I should have known better because this is Marvel, and that's the classic Marvel that, like, let me see. Oh crap, this is not what I. Also, like, I know, I mean, this has been like throughout the series, but Oscar Isaac is just so good at comedy. Like those like small comedic moments where like he opens a door and he's like, oh crap, like I'm wrong, we're screwed. But like, Michael was saying, I thought it was really cool that they're exploring this in that way. It's different. It's something, and it's nice that we're really going into like the Egyptian culture and all of that, and because I know that was really important to the series, and and obviously it's been like a backbone of the series, but to see them really move from like, okay, like there's the history, and then they go to Egypt, obviously, and they have all the history with the ruins and the gods and everything, but then to see it like further with all the stuff in the afterlife was really cool, and I'm glad they're doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, definitely, me too. Josie, how did you feel when he opened that door?
I thought it was lovely, and just also Taweret with her little cards. I felt seen. I love her. I want more of her.
Oh my god, she's my favorite.
She's just flipping through those cards. Yes.
Yeah. But
throwing them all over the place.
I'm with Andrea. I was not expecting the boat, but I was very happy to see it. I thought that was very whimsical and just added even another layer, because it's like, oh yeah, you are dead and we are about to judge you. And it's like, wait, what?
It's crazy. It does. It just adds, like, exactly like you said, a whole new layer. And then I kind of love when she just reaches in and she grabs their little hearts, and then she's like, oh, this is weird. Yeah. And of course places them on the scale, and it won't balance. It's constantly moving because, they're really basically two halves of a whole, but they're not working with each other, which is something I know Andrea's brought up several times about them having to really talk to each other and help each other out. And finally we're getting this, and she's basically tells them like, listen, we're on a boat ride, and if we get to the end and you guys haven't figured your stuff out, you're going overboard. So, I'm rooting for you. Let's do this. Let's get it done. And at the same time, of course, Harrow's telling them telling Mark the exact same thing whenever it's flashing to him. And so they go down this like hallway of memory lane, so to speak, and start on this journey of a complex, emotional, crazy episode. But how did you feel, Michael, when the scales wouldn't balance and she tasked them with talking to each other and working it all out?
I thought that was a nice way to see this other, I don't know what they call, like a pocket world, I guess, or limbo, because it's just, and stick within that frame of the insane asylum. Because like we were mentioning, did we think it's going to be a room, a bingo room? No, it wasn't. So it was just like a nice way to peer and reestablish some things we may have forgotten or may not have forgotten, or just like, was it a dream sort of thing? Because we know how unreliable this world can be, but yet it's so much fun. And it's like, oh yeah, they rearranged the sky at night, and then oh yeah, they were fighting one of the jackals in the bathroom. So it was just a way to see how this war, the memories of each of these characters, I guess, of Mark and Steven. So I thought it was just a nice way to revisit and reestablish. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And Andrea, I know you're with me on the the Marvel humor. So I mean, the fact that Mark's just like, let's just kill the hippo, like it's really not that hard.
I love that. There was so much, because that when he was like we're just gonna kill the hippo and then just like get
steer the boat
out of here. Yeah,
hard.
like that'd be easy. That with, and then Taweret with her little like she takes the hearts and she's like, oh, that worked. I didn't expect that. Like I love her. She's like she's my favorite thing now. Like everything about her is like the classic, like everything I love about like characters that Marvel creates like for these types of shows. But I I love that the scale balancing was kind of a way for us to, because we're also like for most of the series we know that kind of Mark and Steven are two sides of the same coin, but we don't know a lot about that. So to show that, oh, like you really are like connected in this way, like more than just we thought that he was just part of like we didn't know if he was someone he made up. We didn't know if he was really like this other part of him that he didn't know existed. And, we really don't know about their connection. And I think that's, was a cool way to kind of confirm that, yes, like these really are like two of the same people, but also kind of bring some understanding to the fact that like, okay, like you guys have to, really talk and work it out. And which, we've been waiting to see. Yeah. So we finally got in this episode, mostly.
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely a long time coming for them to finally actually talk to each other. Josie, how did you feel about the way they went about this with the rooms of memories, so to speak?
I thought it was appropriate, and I can't think of any other way they could have done it. It helped us get a timeline, like the fact that Steven has been the dominant personality for about 2 months now. And respect, because they went into some very serious things that I guess that was the only way, because I like that we didn't go into them immediately. By making it a room and kind of like a maze of memories, you're able to like ease the audience in, because it's some heavy stuff. And Mark was protecting us. He was like, we're not going to get into that memory just yet. Let's go through some other things first, because it's sad. And I thought they handled it well. And especially they handled Steven as a personality with such sensitivity and just the whole ideas in general. Because this episode just cemented, at least for me, because usually with these Marvel shows, it's like for a plot, but this one is just to establish Moon Knight as a character. So I thought this episode was very well done in that aspect.
Yeah, no, I agree. And to start it off with them being in this room, they walk into like that room and there's all these dead people, and you find out it's everyone Mark's killed, which I did kind of love how he's like, you remember all of them? He's like, you try taking a life. Like, you're going to remember each of them. And he remembers the place that they were. Yep. But then when Steven's like, why is there a little boy in the room of people you killed? Like, at first you're like, did he murder a child? Like, what's happening? And then obviously as they follow him, it unravels that this is his brother who he feels he's responsible for his death. And that's when it gets intense and stuff. But before we dive right into that, Michael, how did you feel just about when you walked in, they walk into the room and there's like all these zombies, basically? That was crazy.
They were neatly arranged zombies. I've never seen such like zombies just like sitting upright and like, oh wow, this is a nice room. Everyone's quiet. It's like, wait a minute, there's zombies. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. And I expected them to just get up from their seats and like chase after them, but no. It was just, now we get to see more of what the repercussions of Mark's history, Mark's past as a mercenary, and it was an ingenious way to do that, and like we were saying, like you said, Tessa, it was adding that humor into a dark scene like that with Mark saying, you try to remember it, because it was just so fascinating. I just thought it was fascinating.
Yeah, no, they walked in and I'm like, what are all these dead people doing? This is crazy. But then as it plays out, it's sad, you know. It kind of makes me feel for Mark. Like I've always felt for Steven, but now I'm like, oh Mark, I mean, you killed all these people you probably shouldn't have, but like, and he tries to, you know,
he justifies
explain
it too.
Justify it. Right. That's what I was looking for. It's like they were the worst of the worst. Like, don't worry. And you're like, you just still killed a lot of people. Andrea, how did you feel about that scene in that room?
I just like how it really gave us more insight to Mark, because we've gotten so much on Steven and we've gotten a lot with Mark too, but we still come off feeling that Steven is like the good one and like the, you know, the one that doesn't hurt people. And, you know, Mark is like more aggressive and Mark's the mercenary and Mark's the one that's trying to get back into Steven's body. Because for so long we've believed that like Steven is like the rightful, you know, main body in Mark is just like someone he made up, which I know we'll get to later. But I thought that was a really nice moment to like start to kind of unravel Mark a little more and show that he's like, yeah, he may be this person that killed, you know, people, but he's not a terrible person. You know, he says like, you know, yeah, I remember, you know, you try killing people. Like, it's not like, oh yeah, I killed them, you know, whatever, they like needed to die. But yeah, no, I thought that was it was kind of a nice way to start to open up Mark a little more, because we really haven't seen a lot about, you know, his motivations and his emotions really, at least kind of like outside of Steven.
Yeah, Josie, how did you feel about that cafeteria? I guess it kind of looked like a cafeteria to me.
Yeah.
Full of dead people, appetizing. So.
I agree with absolutely everything said. So the main thing that, to say something new that I was feeling at that moment was like, where's Jake?
Yes, I know.
This entire episode I was waiting for him, and I'm like, is he the Mephisto of Moon Knight?
I think he is the Mephisto of Moon Knight. There was a moment where I thought it was him when they were walking down the hallway and they're looking at the past stuff, and then they see him standing there in front, and we find out a little later that it was after his mother passed. But
yeah,
and he was kind of like, do you remember this? And he's like, I mean, I guess. And obviously he's trying to hide that memory, right? Suppress it more. But in that moment I thought, wait, is that Jake? And then it never was. It was much more heartbreaking than actually being Jake.
But I also like that scene in the cafeteria set up what we find out later with Khonshu.
Yes.
So I like that detail, how Mark feels towards that, and just Steven being the one to point it out. I like that. We'll talk about that later. I was just like, oh my gosh.
There's so much though, but that's
there's a lot to get into.
Good. They're so good at laying the groundwork all throughout. Like they're so great at writing. And then speaking of writing, the one thing I want to mention is when he said, I wrote it down so I got it exactly. Mark says, I kept wishing I'd fail and one of them would kill me instead. The healing ended up being a curse, which is like, it's so sad. And you're just like, oh my gosh, this poor guy, you know, again, it makes you realize like where he is. It's like, oh, it's so sad. But then of course, Steven runs after the boy. He's like, you know, wants to get the story. Did you murder this child? What's going on? And kind of locks Mark out so that he can follow him. And it's so sad because you see him going along with his brother. You figure out it's his brother pretty instantly on. Steven doesn't even remember he has a brother. You know, he's like, oh, I had a brother. And then they start playing that Dr. Grant movie out, Dr. Stephen Grant. And they go into the cave and it starts to rain. And the little boy is like, Mom said for us to not go when it's raining. He's like, don't be a baby. And then one of the most beautifully shot tragic moments, I feel like, is with Steven trying to get the boys out running after. And you see him like swimming in the water and just trying to get him, and we don't actually see the brother die, really, luckily, because that would have been I think a little too over the top.
Good decision.
But but you get what's happening. Michael, how did you feel as it slowly started to unravel what was going on here with Mark's brother?
I thought at this point we would actually see the mother that Steven was speaking to, and I was like, okay, you know, this, because so far we've never seen in all of their conversations, we never seen the other side of that. So it's like, okay, we're going to see the mom. And then is it the mom though? Like we said, so we don't at this point we don't know if it's the mom because this is Mark's life. This is Mark's brother and Mark's family, and how all that played out was just it adds to the mystery of this episode. And then as we go on, it just gets more tragic, and we get to see how that boy ended up in the cafeteria, or there's like the history behind it, and then we understand more of the complexities of Mark's trauma. So yeah, this was a nice way to as the show moves on. Basically, it was a nice segment of it.
Yeah, I wouldn't use the word nice, Mike. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, well,
I know what you mean, though. No, writing-wise, it's done very well. It's very dark and depressing. I was like, man, just having 2 kids myself, I'm like, oh my God, now I'm never going to let my children play outside ever again. Like, stay inside always. Don't go
Stay away from the caves, at least.
Right, stay away from caves in the rain, okay? They'll be like, okay, Mom, whatever. Andrea, how did you feel as this darkness surrounding his brother unraveled?
Yeah, I realized, like you, I don't think I can watch things anymore now that I have a child. I'm like, because I watch everything and I'm like, oh, like, what if that happened? Like, I can't ever have that happen. Yeah, it's such like a weird like thing to realize. So I'm glad you're on board with me with that.
Well, but I'm not alone.
It's no, it was, I mean, I didn't see it coming either. Sometimes like you can see things coming and like you see like, when you're like, oh, like, something probably happens to him or something, but I actually didn't really see that coming, even when they were like, let's go play in the caves and rains. And I'm thinking like, this is just, because you really didn't know where the story was going either. Like he didn't know he had a brother. You don't know if like his brother, died. You didn't know if he didn't, maybe his brother was Jacob, but like like, or who knows. But I thought so the whole sequence where Stephen realizes what's happening and he tries to save him, and then you realize obviously he's not going to save him, is just so heartbreaking. Oscar Isaac, I mean, I feel like I've said a million times that he kills everything he's in, but he just knocked it out of the park this whole episode, and especially that scene. And there's another scene I'm thinking of that we'll get to later, but like, man, he's so good. He's so good as this character.
He's extremely talented. And he just proves it time and time again. But like, he's outdoing his own performances. I feel like every episode you're like, he got better at playing these people. Like, really, and he was already incredible. So how is he doing this? And then one thing I want to mention too, as they're walking up to the cave, you see that like dead bird, that looks kind of like Conchi. There's all these things throughout that just like, I love it. I love all the little Easter egg tie-ins, nods, whatever that Marvel's doing here. But Josie, how did you feel about this heartbreaking reveal about Mark's brother?
Yeah, I really like that detail with the bird skeleton, because I was like, ooh, Conchu.
Yeah.
But mostly with the scene, you know where it's going, but it's still sad to see it unfold, because it clearly holds so much weight for who this character is, and you immediately, that's when you start connecting with them. It's like, oh, this is a sad man. This is a sad man. And just the repercussions of what that holds, and then you understand, because at least for me, I always knew what was up with the mom. Like you know, but it's different to finally get that confirmation and the weight of that confirmation, because it's like, oh wait, he's been talking to this figure that wasn't the kindest person, which we'll probably discuss soon. But it's just that whole scene just really puts a turn on the entire show as a whole, honestly.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And then especially like what's to follow, like you're talking about with the mother, where she's completely blaming him, and not just blaming him, but insinuating that he did it on purpose. She's like, you were always jealous of him from the moment he was born. I should have known you'd do something like this. Like, you can't put that weight on a child. So, of course, this is what Mark has been dealing with his whole life. And it's why Mark feels he's responsible. Right. But, yeah, I always knew the mom wasn't there. I assumed the mom's, like, dead, right? Not there.
Yeah, a lot of us were like, she's dead.
Right. But I didn't think she was, like, the world's worst mother and also dead. Because I can never imagine, like, for me, one child dies, which I don't even want to think about ever. But like, I feel like you'd bring the other one closer, not like completely push them away. It doesn't feel like the right mom mindset. So let's go to Andrea. How did you feel about this mom thing? I didn't like her at all.
She doesn't get the MCU Mom of the Year award. Which says something, considering that like there have been not great moms and then treating their kids great. But no, I mean, I found it really, it's heartbreaking. And it's clearly it shaped so much of who he was and who he became. And I mean, you almost wonder if there's, obviously there's that resentment that she, she blames him, and she clearly seemed like she loved her, younger son more. But you kind of almost wonder if there's like more to it. Like, is there more of a reason why she forever resented him? Like, is it anything that has to do with something with the larger story? Is it just because
she's a horrible person? No, I'm just kidding.
Like, I mean, you don't know. It's it's like, is there like, does something, I don't know. It's like something happened when he was born, like,
right. Yeah.
Don't know, but, and, maybe we won't know, but it is, I mean, when taking what you know about Stephen and what you know about Mark and kind of putting it together with this mom figure, we finally see, and we finally, kind of get some light on, is it's depressing.
It's so depressing.
It's depressing. I can't like say it's not depressing. It was very emotional this morning.
Yeah, it is. Like, as a mom, I can't picture ever treating my child even close to like that. Like, no matter how mad I get.
Come down for your birthday. Like, I don't want to say happy birthday to you. I want to ignore you. Like, I mean, that's like, go to therapy.
Yeah. Go to therapy. That's a great. I love that. Michael, how did you feel about this reveal of how the mom, how she treated Mark after the death of his brother?
I thought it was really a downer. It's like, oh my gosh, we're really. I don't think I can continue watching this because it's so sad. But it's at this moment where it's like, I want to give Stephen a hug because he has to watch this for the first time. It's like, wait a minute. And then this is where I guess Stephen was, or are we going too far? I don't.
I think that's a little bit. There's one more thing that happens between. That's a little bit later.
That's a little. We'll go, but it was just so traumatic for Mark and Stephen just to, I guess, relive it. Because like we were saying about the birthdays, she doesn't come down. The dad says, all right, we'll do it next year, sort of thing. And then the second birthday, it was like she comes down drinking. It's like, oh my gosh, this is just so awful for Mark just to see this. And then after Mark repeatedly said to Stephen, I don't want to go here. Let's not go here. It's a bad idea. Just to get some context on all of that and understand how Mark became who he is right now. It was fascinating to dive deep and explore that character mindset.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see how this would mess a kid up for sure. I mean, that's where he lives every day, and to have, I mean, especially birthdays, like mothers should celebrate birthdays too, because like that's the day they gave birth, like they're a core part of that
Taweret.
day. Wow. So I don't know. I hated it. I hated the way she treated him. Josie, how did you feel about just this awful mother?
Yeah, it was just one of those moments where, at least for me, it clicked, because a lot of DID stems from trauma. So it was that moment that you realize, oh, this is where Stephen comes from, or at least that's the idea they're giving us. And despite how sad it was, it made me respect the show more, because you can tell that they did their research. They wanted to handle this carefully and respectfully. And I like that they never let us see the abuse. They only insinuate it. And the most we get to is like the verbal and emotional abuse, but we never see that physical abuse that comes later, which I appreciated, because again, Marvel is for everybody, but usually it's marketed towards younger audiences, like teenagers, and sometimes we have younger people watching it. So I love that balance, and I still love that we were able, because Moon Knight is a dark character, so I like that they also didn't handle it with gloves. it was respectful in general, but it was sad, and it went back to giving purpose to Dr. Harrow's scenes, because the way he was like, oh, sometimes people imagine it as a castle, some people imagine it as a psych ward, apparently. And it's just a compartmentalization, and I just think this episode is smart, well written, and respectful.
Yeah, I agree. But also what you're saying, when you go back to Harrow, the way it keeps going back and forth, because then you're like, wait, which is the real one?
Right.
Oh, that was driving me crazy.
I still have no idea.
I still have no idea. Like, is he imagining Harrow?
Right. Has he imagined Harrow the whole time? Like, and why would Harrow be the one to be helping him through this? That makes no sense that he would imagine him as that, but whatever. We end up getting to see, before we get to like the crazy stuff with the mom and Steven, we do get to see where we get to see that whole thing play out, kind of how Khonshu came into Mark's life, and with all of the people dead, including Layla's dad, and Mark's about to off himself. He's literally about to shoot himself in the face and kill himself, which was crazy and dark and emotional as well. And then Khonshu starts talking to him, do you want to die or do you want to live? Like, just work for me. It's cool. And to see Steven be the one, and I think, Josie, you had brought this up a little bit earlier, but where Steven's the one who's just like, oh, he was manipulating you from the start.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's all like, no, I just always was a killer. Like, no big deal. I love that spot. So, Josie, why don't we start with you on this scene where, Steven's the one who pointed out to Mark, like, hey.
Yeah, it just shows how Mark has been manipulated his entire life. Like, his mom made him believe he was a monster. His dad tried, but I guess his dad was also off to the side compared to his mom. And then Khonshu takes advantage of that, and like, he sees it, and it's that moment where you're like, was Harrow right? Was he right? Because he's pointed it out, especially I think it was episode 2. Can't remember right now, but when they're eating the lentil soup, and he's like, no, he's taking advantage of you. I've been in your position before, and despite what he says, he's not the best god out there. And that moment cemented it, and then Steven being the one to point it out, I really liked. But I also, one little thing, I like that at that moment they said, you will be Moon Knight. And I'm like, oh, they said the thing.
Yeah.
They said the title. Yes.
They said it. I know. Again, Marvel, they always work that stuff in there. They're like, you can be like, oh no, poor Mark. He's getting taken advantage of. They said the thing. Yay. Like, thanks, Marvel. Michael, how did you feel about this whole scene where we get to actually see where Khonshu kind of recruited Mark, so to speak?
I like the origins of that relationship, I guess, so to speak, because Josie pretty much covered everything, but it was just, I guess it was a nice way to see F. Murray Abraham again, or hear his voice again. Yeah, because it's been one episode at least.
I know.
Yeah, it feels like forever, honestly. But just to see the nature of that relationship, and from I guess we can kind of rely on Steven because he's seeing it. It's from his perspective at this standpoint that, like Josie was saying, this is all the trauma, and then you are manipulated, and because if we were seeing it from Mark probably would have buried it and say we would have denied it or something right to that effect, and seeing it from Steven, it just feels more real. You can trust him, and yeah. And then of course, like we're talking about him taking advantage. I mean, he literally says, like, I feel your mind and it's fractured and broken. You'd be great. Like, you're exactly what I'm looking for. It's like, geez, Khonshu.
You should have been like, sir, I'm going to give you a second chance at life so that you may go to therapy. Nah, I'm going to use you to carry out my deeds.
Exactly. Andrea, how did you feel about, finally seeing where Khonshu came across Mark and how that played out?
I just, I liked, like Josie was saying, I like when they finally said, Moon Knight actually out loud. But I also like that then we saw the costume, like we saw that whole little like cool like costume reveal. It's not really
Yes.
reveal. We've seen it, but like we saw
Sailor Moon transformation.
Yeah, we saw that
His first
transformation.
transformation,
Like it's too early. Like we saw that whole transformation happen, which was really cool. And also I just thought it was like a really nice kind of full circle moment for Steven, because we've seen Steven become like more confident, and we know he's still like trying to assert himself more, and and we saw Mark finally like kind of start to trust him and let him in, which by the way, like now it makes so much more sense why Mark like tries to keep him out so much and like doesn't want to like deal with him. But seeing him like kind of come into his own like 5 episodes later, and kind of be the one to kind of take charge and kind of assert his knowledge, and this was kind of, it felt like a really nice, it felt in a way like, I know this is the penultimate episode, and obviously you don't know what's going to happen in the finale, how much is going to be tied up, but it felt very much like between that and a scene that we'll get to later, like it feels very much like, okay, like we finally reached the point where they've both like matured into who they should be separately, and and that informs so much of their I guess their storytelling.
Yeah, no, you're right. I feel like this one has the potential to really, truly wrap things up and like really stick the landing. So I really hope they do, because that's something I feel like a lot of the Marvel shows haven't done for me, is like completely stuck the landing.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is, it's getting there. I feel like they can do it. I have high hopes. Knock on wood. Yep. I have high hopes. I have high hopes. But so then we've got, Taweret finds out that souls are being judged before their time, which we know this is what Harrow is doing, is when he's just holding people's hands and killing them, like, the scales don't balance. So she's kind of decides she wants to help them out. And she's like, all right, and they even say like, get Layla, tell Layla to come find Khonshu, get Khonshu to our body, because she's like, you're just going to be brought back to a body that's dead, like that has a bullet hole in it. Like, right. You're not going to be able to like do much. So you won't be able to heal. Which I love how she immediately, like, she's so into them. I just love how she roots for them, and I just adore her. So how did you feel, Michael, about this, of her wanting to help and her willingness to help? Although doesn't get that far yet, but I'm glad she's willing to help. How did you feel, Michael?
Yeah, I feel like she's more of a mother than, Mark's mother was ever to this character, because she's always helping, but not helping in a way that doesn't feel like, they don't have to do any of the work, as a mother or a parent, you want the kid to learn and everything. So that I like that aspect of how it leads into her being the nurturing God, kind of like the mother, the God of children. So that's all I have to say about that.
No, you're exactly right though. She's like a good mother to them. I mean, that's really what her she is the God of. But I did like that a lot. Yeah, you're right. Exactly, like having the child do it themselves, but like, I'm going to point you in the right direction and I'll help you get there, but you need to do this all on your own. Andrea, how did you feel about her willingness to help? And
I felt the same, especially because at that point you've seen Mark's mother and, the type of person she is. And, and then to have this like other like mother figure kind of be more just softer and more willing to help. And I think it's also, it's a nice thing, like to kind of show we were talking about the afterlife and how like, you portray different religions and like how everyone thinks in the afterlife. And I like how they portrayed it as like, it's not just like you're in between and I'm like, okay, make a decision, we're going to throw you off the boat. Like they really kind of like took care to make it like, okay, well, like we have this God or this, character who or this part of mythology that really does like serve to help you, pass over in this way and very gently. And like, and I think that's just it just felt like a nice kind of representation of like what that could be, because it could have also just been like, like we're stuck here, great, what do we do? I guess we have to figure it out. And so I like that part of it.
Yeah, definitely. Josie, how did you feel about this moment?
I love her. Her and her little cards and her willingness to help.
I want a sideshow figure of her
Yes.
holding her little. If they don't make a figure or a Funko, at least a Funko. Give me a Funko of her holding a little card.
We've got to get a Funko.
I know they made Alligator Loki. They'll
With the
make
cards,
right?
I want her holding the cards.
Oh, I love her so much. But then this is the part. This is the big reveal, right? Here, as they go in, they're about to maybe go back to the land of the living, which is what I totally thought they were going to do. I was like, oh, perfect. And they're like, okay, we got one more thing to do. And Mark's like, no, can we just talk about it? Let me tell you. I'll explain it to you. You don't need to watch this. And he's very protective over Steven, which I think hasn't felt like until this episode. But like you said, Andrea, as now when you think back, it's more like he's been trying to protect Steven and try to hide him away. And we see the creation of Steven, which is absolutely heartbreaking when the mother comes in and grabs the belt. And then Mark is like, don't watch. Your whole purpose has been to not watch this. I wanted you to live this life where you think, you're a happy life. You think your mom's alive. And then that kind of breaks Steven. Michael, how did you feel about this moment with the reveal of how Steven was created and what his purpose was and that whole moment?
It was, again, this just tragic because just to know that he was created from his previous trauma, it's like, you know what, this is kind of, I didn't do my job as an older brother, so I'll just make this kind of persona where I can actually fulfill that duty or atone for that duty. But it was really dark, and like you guys were saying, it just finally gives us some exposition or context as to how or why was this persona created, and that this is an actual persona. It's not another, or it's just not another person, like the unreliable narrator. Now we can see that these are two different people, and what they've experienced is actually what we can actually believe what they've experienced. So yeah,
we finally get some closure, or not really closure, but truth out of this, I guess.
Yeah.
Even if it's not the one we wanted to see. Yeah. I would have been poor Steven. I just wanted to hug him again because he's finally starting to realize everything. He's like, I thought I was the dominant personality.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on? Like, oh, hug. Give me, we got to bring it back to we got to hug Steven. But Andrea, how did you feel about just witnessing the creation of Steven?
It just took me so much by surprise, that whole reveal, because I didn't, really see it coming that much, and to just know, and it was heartbreaking to know that, he was really created like out of trauma, but two, the fact that like he made, like Michael was saying, he made that persona. So to like atone, really, for part of it was really atoning for the fact that he couldn't save his brother. He couldn't take care of him. And I also think it's heartbreaking when you watch Mark being like, because we think of Mark as like having such a hard front and being so aggressive. And then you see him being like, no, like, don't watch this. I don't want you to watch this. Like, he is almost like terrified. Like, he is so scared that this side of him that he created, that he like kept, for so long, is like innocent, is gonna be like that's gonna ruin everything if he sees kind of the truth of his life. And I thought that was heartbreaking, like just to see Mark be that like, nope, we're not gonna do this. We're not like, I'm just like, oh my God, like classic, just so much classic trauma. But it's so dark, and it's so different than, WandaVision obviously dealt with grief, but I think it dealt with it in a very specific, different way than obviously it's dealing with here. And WandaVision also dealt with like a lot of mental health stuff with, and like it's the same here, but the exploration of, I think, both of like those shows with mental health and with grief has been like so different and distinct. And I really love how Marvel is leaning into like the very dark, kind of more intense aspects in their shows with this.
Yeah, they're completely unafraid to dive into it.
Yeah.
They're like, listen, guys, this is a real thing, and we're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
And as hard as it is to watch and as emotional as it is to watch, I can appreciate it for sure. Josie, how did you feel about the creation of Steven?
Yeah, it was just the fact that you realize that Steven's surface is a way for him to cope with his reality, which is, again, oftentimes, my knowledge of DID is very limited, but a lot of what has been said is that it is a way to cope with trauma. So I knew something traumatic was looming, but not like this, and it was very sad. But again, I like the way they handled it. I like to believe it was, again, respectful. Because Steven, I just want to hug him.
I know. And that young actor, like, can we talk about how he switched accents too?
So good.
And when he's like sitting there, like, that's not my mom, that's not my mom. I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, it was very sad.
So,
It's just this figure, like, mothers are supposed to be maternal, supposed to take care of you, and just the fact that Mark has to cope with the fact that his mom hates him. As Andrea mentioned, she probably preferred her younger son if she's acting this way. Like, she treats Mark like a monster to the point that he just starts believing he's one. So he creates Steven in that moment to be a good kid in hopes that maybe that'll persuade her. Like, look, I can be like my younger brother too. I can be sweet and small and caring and respectful and like organized. And must have been hard to figure out that wasn't enough.
I know. Oh my gosh. And that's where that whole part with Steven too, when Steven realizes that his mom is dead. And so Steven actually ends up in Harrow's office, which I love that they did that. I thought that was fantastic. Yeah. It was so good. And especially how Harrow was like, I didn't know I'd get to talk to you ever again. You're like, oh, this is so crazy and so good. And then the fact that Harrow is kind of the one that forces him to come to the realization that his mom is dead. You know, like, okay, we'll call her right now. Talk to her. Here's the phone.
And he's just like,
yeah. Oh, Josie, how did you feel about that whole moment and that scene?
I like how it was written, but it broke me. Because you're expecting, I don't know, like the way he played it out was very much like a psychologist, like a doctor. Yeah. And he, like, you hear that there's no one on the line. It's just that ringing tone. And you're like, oh my God, Steven. And then him realizing it, you're just there with him. And it's just, again, someone get Oscar Isaac a chiropractor because he's carrying the show. His performance just like this cemented him as one of the best performances in the MCU in general. And I'm like, yes, Oscar.
Yeah, I mean, this episode was very much just him. You know, it of course we had a little bit of Harrow. We've got Taweret in as well, but this was really his episode to shine as Mark and as Steven. And to think like he's playing both these characters and he's playing them both so well. Andrea, how did you feel about that moment where Steven admits to himself, I guess, that his mom is dead with thanks of Harrow? Very weird.
I just want Oscar Isaac to get his award recognition. Like, you just like give him an Emmy. You give him. I mean, it's proven that they can give Disney Plus shows nominations. So give Oscar Isaac his nomination because he has deserved it so much. But it was heartbreaking, and you see his face when he holds out the phone and he's staring at it, and you see like so many things pass over his face at that moment, and he's trying so hard to hold his emotions in. It just, knowing what we know now about his mom by the time we're watching that scene just broke me. It was so emotionally devastating.
Yeah, and he's trying to justify too. He's like, "Don't call her. She's not going to answer. She screens all her calls. She's afraid of telemarketers." Like, and it's like, "Oh my God, Steven!" Like, you could tell he's just trying so hard to get him not to.
Like, he doesn't want to admit, he doesn't want to accept it. He doesn't want to believe that it's real.
So sad, Michael. How did you feel about this scene?
It was another heavier scene after all what we've experienced so far in this one episode alone. It's like, how much more can you add? Because I'm just going to go through a breakdown myself. I can't really handle anymore. But we just have to power through it because it's just so fascinating how they handled the emotional complexities of this. And I don't know what else I can add, but it was just it was great how they handled it.
And then to go from this to I love /hate/ had a hard time watching, but that moment outside his parents' house when his mother died, and he's out there watching and he's crying and he's broken down, and then Steven comes out and just picks up his phone and is like talking to his mom who's not there, like, I got lost again, help me. And then Mark's like, oh, that's where our lives started bleeding into each other. That's kind of where you get the reveal that Steven has been the dominant personality for the last 2 months, and that it was his mother's death that really catapulted this. But man, Michael, how did you feel just about that moment where, it switches from Mark to Steven, and then Steven immediately just calls his mom? I was like, oh
my gosh. It was just another heavy experience to see that dynamic between Steve or Mark at the time and his dad, just that distance they had between each other. And there was no exchange of words, because obviously with how far they were, just to see how that relationship deteriorated, I guess. And we actually got to see a little bit before with the dad when he was younger, but that's besides the point. And I think this is the first time we got a confirmation, not a confirmation so much, but that Mark is Jewish, because I don't think the episode is actually visited. Okay, so so again, it leans back into the comics and like how it pulls from, and it just shows like this is based on the comics. We're just trying to stay as true as possible, but also be true to the religion as well. And it was just heavy, because now you guys were talking about looking at the not looking at the phone, but he pulls out his phone in this one scene, and he talks to the mom, and it's like, who's he talking to? So this again, it goes back to kind of the psychological trip, because we just heard the mom died, we just saw we saw the Shiva, and now he's talking to the mom, but who's he talking to? We never hear who he's talking to, so it just plays into the fact that there is somebody on the other line, but we just don't know.
Maybe, or he's just making it all up in his head and talking to
that's unreliable.
I think he was just making it up, because this is the first time they let us see the phone while he's talking, and it's just a blank. Like it's like as if you were talking right now to the apps.
It's just like the home screen.
So like I like to believe Marvel is mostly very meticulous. I like to believe that was on purpose. Like he just picks up his phone and immediately starts talking to it, but he's not really calling anyone, which just makes it sadder.
I know. It's like, and for that to be the moment too, like this is when you're gonna call your mom, and like I don't know, it just breaks my heart. But Andrea, how did you feel about this whole scene? And
I love the fact that they finally gave a little bit of representation to Mark's Jewish.
I know a lot of people have been talking about it on Twitter.
Because
so curious
as someone like who is Jewish, I love seeing like that kind of representation. And in the it's canon in the comics. So I know a lot of people, like I have a lot of friends that have been talking about like, are they going to bring it into the show? Or are they going to ignore it? Like, please don't ignore it, because it is like a very specific part of his character in the comics and his history. And so it was like that little, like felt this little like joy, little like, I don't know, this little moment of pride when you saw like the yarmulke on his head and like realized, okay, well, at least they're like showing us this. And at least it's a little moment that kind of meant a lot, that they at least acknowledge that, even if they don't do anything else with it, like at least they acknowledged it, which love. And then like when he really kind of gets into it and he like rips it off his head and he's just like starts crying, and it's a whole like you really see Oscar Isaac going for his Emmy here. That's all I'm saying.
Yes.
But also I thought it was I don't know if it was intended to be in this way, but like I read it, the whole scene, as kind of a sad little parallel to, when he's standing outside and his dad is like, come in, and he's saying, nope, like I'm not going to come in. And that just made me think of how, when he was a kid, like, he had his birthday parties and his mom was there, and be like, try to get his mom to come down, and his mom refused to come down because like she didn't care. She couldn't forgive him, all of that. And now he can't even he doesn't even want to go into that room and like see his dad, see all these people. And he's like, nope, like I'm going to keep my distance now. And it was a really kind of sad little heartbreaking parallel.
I hadn't thought of that, and now I'm sadder. So thanks for that,
Yeah.
Andrea.
You're welcome. I'm going to keep sad at
Honestly.
10 in the morning.
Yeah. Josie, how did you feel about this whole moment? If there's anything you have to add.
Yeah, I just think they handled that internal turmoil well, because it's that yearning for a parent that doesn't go away. Like, you might hate them for what they did, but like, you want to love them because they're your parent, but you're mostly loving the idea of them and what they should have been instead of what they are. So I think that was all there. That was all there in his face and his performance, because you can clearly tell he's standing outside. So there's something he's yearning for, but he can't go in because clearly whatever he wants doesn't exist. It stopped existing a while ago. And maybe for him, it's like, did it ever exist? Because again, like Andrea mentioned, it's like, wow, my mom hates me so much because like I feel responsible for the death of my brother, but did she ever love me? So it's just that whole thing.
Oh, it's so sad.
Oh my gosh.
And then Marvel's like, okay, well, we'll give you one little fight. Let's give you a fight scene.
Yeah.
And then break your heart at the end of the fight. And Michael has something that is going to make everyone out there's hearts break that he said before we. But before we get to that, Michael, before we get to it, the action scene, I was glad we got a little bit of a fight, a little bit of an action scene. I thought Stand was a really super cool effect. So obviously we've got the unbalanced souls climbing to claim new unbalanced souls because, well, they got there and scales didn't balance yet. So they're fighting him, and every time they punch him, like sand pops off. I thought that was a super cool effect. Loved the fight scene. So Andrea, what did you think about having a little fight scene in this episode?
It was fun. I mean, that was the other part of, when I was talking about Steven really coming into his own, was the other part I was thinking of, where like Steven is like, hey, we're the same person. That means I can fight this guy rather than being like so timid and scared. And he like punches him out and he's like so proud of him. And like you see Mark being like, yeah, like he finally got there. Like he's so proud. And there's that moment of being like, all right, we can do this. So I love that. And I love that Marvel kind of threw in that little kind of that little action scene in a episode that was so full of like heavy emotional storytelling stuff to get like that little bit of action there. And it obviously helped kind of set the stage and set everything up for where I assume we're going to go from here. So I feel like it was a nice way to kick the end of the episode into gear, because I feel like if it had just been like kind of more heavy, backstory stuff or just like, depressing stuff, it would have led into a even more depressing place for next week.
Yeah. It was definitely a good way to end the episode, sort of almost end the episode. The way they ended the episode made me upset. And Michael, I'm saving you. But Josie,
I have to know when to say it because
I will tell you. Josie, how did you just feel about the fight scene? And they gave us a little bit of action.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, especially that whole aspect of just even being like, haha, I can do this. Because that's what's like when he reads the poster in that room where he's like, oh, Stephen Grant has no fear. And it's like he finally embraces that. He finally embraces who he should be and the fact that he is capable, because that's what we've seen him struggling throughout the season. So that was a really nice full circle moment with him.
It was lovely until he gets pulled off the boat and Steven, Michael, I called you Steven. Michael, why don't you tell us what you had to say about Steven before we, it's awful. Andrea, get ready.
So this show has a lot of nice ways of saying, can't use a paperweight. But now I was saying, Stephen Grant would be a nice garden display because the whole.
I know.
Oh, how dare you talk to Stephen Grant like that? He deserves a hug. No.
You can't hug him.
We can hug him all the time now.
He'll turn to sand. His sand will fall apart if you hug him. I think. I don't want to.
And just his face, like Oscar Isaac's face in that moment, I was like,
I know.
The way it was pacing too, honestly. The way that it was paced, it was, I guess, I don't want to say wonderful because I've been using the wrong words, but it was just well paced. Basically, you can feel the emotion just coming out of you as you see his that face, just like, oh no, don't go. I'm trying to catch up with you, but I can't. And it's
reaching out.
Yeah.
It's like,
and they're reaching out for each other after they spent so long like not wanting to be near each other. Now they're like, I don't want to lose you.
Yeah.
It's sad. I hope we get Steven next episode, because now I'm worried that we won't.
Well, I feel like they have to. I mean, I don't know. I feel like in order to tie things up, they would have to go back to him. But
I would hope so. But who knows? I don't know. That part was absolutely heartbreaking. And of course, with Steven, I feel like it's connected with Steven off the boat. The scales balance. Yep. I don't know. Is it that they finally reached this moment where they trust each other and spoke truth to each other and all that? And then now that he's gone, it's bounced. I don't know. It makes me really sad. Josie, how did you feel about the goodbye, maybe, to Steven?
I didn't want him. I didn't want any of it. I don't want any of it. Bring him back. I hope that he comes back, because I mean, again, I'm not that familiar with Moon Knight as a character, but from what I've seen, that's kind of like his whole thing. That is part of his character breakdown and like who Moon Knight is. So I really hope he does come back. Not just because I love Oscar Isaac's portrayal of Steven, but I don't want him to lose what's been working. And now they clearly work together. The scales balance, they become one in a way. So bring him back. I don't like this. I don't like this.
I know. Andrea, you think he's coming back? He's got to, right?
I mean, I would think he has to, but I mean, I don't want to say anything, because I also 3 years ago thought there was no way they could kill certain people in Endgame. So what do I know?
Right. I know. It's true. Marvel likes to rip our hearts out. I don't know. Michael, you think Steven is coming back?
It's so hard, because on one side, I think, they have to bring him back because he's been such a vital character, but at the same time, it kind of undoes everything that, for Mark's character development. So I am really, at a crossroads. Be like, do I want him back? Do I not want him back? Because I want something that makes the story feel complete, but not too much fan service, I guess. So yeah.
Right. Well, at the same time, though, this is, like Josie said, this is his character in the comics. So this is the idea is like the center of him. So feels like we need him. And also, speaking of that, I feel like we need Jake. I thought Jake was coming this episode. I get why they didn't do it. I get it needed to be about Mark and Steven, but like, come on. They've got to.
I'm just saying, if there's a season 2, that would be a good post-credit sequence.
True. That's very true. Because they've even hinted at him several times.
Oh,
so how are they not giving us him?
Especially, I remember I was talking with some people the other day dissecting the show as a whole, and they were like, well, if you think about it, some of the more violent scenes at the beginning of the show were probably Jake and not Mark, because we don't see them.
True.
Yeah.
And most of the time when Mark is in control, we do see him like acting and everything, like acting out things and the violence. But those very violent moments we don't. And I'm like, Jake, are you there?
It's true. That's a very, very good point. Because that's even that one moment is when people had been killed, when they say, oh, it wasn't me. Was it you? It wasn't me. In episode, was it 3, maybe 4? I don't know.
Yeah,
but
he's been hinted at this entire time. So I thought he was going to show up here, because I thought it would have been nice to see him in this, like the psych ward, instead of in real life, because I don't think, as we've seen, I don't think it would be productive to the story where it's going right now. So at least in that space, it would have made more sense. So I don't know. I guess I'm excited at the fact that I don't know where this is going. I like surprises, but also give us Steven.
I know, right. Well, no, I agree. This is one of the first, it might even be the first, Marvel series where I don't have any idea where they're going from here.
Yep.
Usually I fairly know where the finale is going. At least you can assume bits and pieces, but I have no clue, because as of now, Mark's like in the field of reeds and the afterlife, and Steven is,
can I just
as Michael so put it, a garden display.
That was so well shot. I love the song that was playing. I loved how he looked. I loved how it like panned out and like the sunset was behind him. I just loved everything about it. This cemented it as one of my favorite endings of any episode of any Marvel TV show. episode 4 was like my favorite of this show. But this one I was like, yes, this is a genuinely good ending.
The worst part about it is that he's in like the happy afterlife, but he doesn't want to be there. Like you can tell he's like, what's going on? Like obviously he feels he's got this stuff he's got to do. He's got to stop Hera. So
he's like, do I deserve this? This whole thing is like, do I deserve happiness? Do I deserve joy? Do I deserve fulfillment? Like I'm here because of Steven, and now Steven is gone. So that's probably, considering what's happened with him with his brother, he's probably like feeling very guilty.
Yeah, this was an episode. Very good episode. I can't wait for next week. I can't wait to talk about it with you guys. Before we wrap up, does anybody have, what's their favorite scene or favorite moment of the episode? Michael, you want to go? This is a hard one. So
oh my gosh, this is a hard one. I would have to say just opening as we first go into the boat. Just to see how director Mohamed Diab has opened the door to more of the Egyptology, the Egyptian religion, introducing us to like feel the reeds and more of Taweret and what Taweret's purpose is. Just seeing more of that representation through a director who's actually Egyptian. Just come through fruition is really great. So I especially like what he did with that.
Ooh, that was a good one, Michael. That was good. Andrea, how about you?
There's so many scenes I could pick, but anything with Taweret, because I just from the moment she like, because we didn't know, she's like, hi. And then that's how we ended. And then she started being like, hello. And like, I thought it was just like, maybe this is in your head. And like, hello, I'm here with my cards. I'm gonna like everything. It was just like a nice little bit of I guess happiness in an episode that was otherwise sad. But I love her.
Josie, how about you?
I'm gonna stick with the final moment in the Field of Reeds because I loved how beautifully ironic that moment was.
I'm gonna go like dark and sad, but like the actual, like the creation of Steven, with that young actor there, I just loved that moment where he just flips the switch, and then of course also Mark being like, you were created, your purpose was to not see any of this, you know, because I feel like it brought a lot to Mark, and like we've said this whole series so far, but especially like you realize, oh, maybe Mark has been protecting Steven this whole time instead of being mean to him. And, you know, he's known Steven's existed clearly, and he's just kind of been trying to protect him from everything. And it's sad and it's emotional, and I can't wait to see what happens next week. I'm also sad that it's the final episode next week. This feels like this went by very quickly.
It did.
But we'll be back next week to break it all down. Before we go, Michael, why don't you let everyone know where they can find you?
Let's see if I can get this right again. You can find me at That's It LA, We Live Entertainment, and the Nerds of Color, and I am Michael J. Lee.
Yes!
On all socials. So yeah, yes.
Andrea, how about you?
You can find me on social, specifically Twitter, at _A Towers, and you can find me writing at Entertainment Weekly.
And Josie.
And you can find me at the Josie Marie on Twitter and Letterboxd, and keep up with all the shenanigans and Screen Spec, which I'm writing for now. It's a new website. Please check them out. They're doing a very lovely job.
Awesome. I will check them out for sure. And you guys out there watching, thank you for joining us yet again. And let us know your favorite part of the episode down below. Let us know if it broke you. It broke me just a little bit. And so I'm excited yet not excited for next week. You guys can find me everywhere at Mama's Geeky, mamasgeeky.com, Mama's Geeky, all social media, and here on YouTube. Thanks for joining us today. And we will see you guys next week for the finale.